Hi, I'm Emily, and today I'm going to interview my mom about my grandfather. Who are you going to be talking about today?
I'm going to be talking about my father, John Blazis. He died in 1991.
How was your relationship with your dad?
Oh, I had a great relationship with my father. He was the best. There were 8 of us kids. He was the best father. Very even-tempered, very loving, very giving. Always wanted the best for you. He was great.
Tell me more about him and his life. What did he do?
He grew up in Pequannock, Connecticut. Lived there his whole life until he died. He lived in the same house. His father had a store when he was young, and then as he he went in the service for a short time. When he came back, he opened up a general store, and had it for over 40 years. And him and my mother got married when he was 33 years old. And they ended up having 8 kids, 6 girls and 2 boys. And he was always real proud of his family.
What is your best memory with your father?
My best memory with my father are his hands. I used to love my father's hands. I used to love even when I was an adult, if we were walking near each other, he'd always grab my hand and hold it. And he had the biggest, strongest hands. And he, don't start crying now. And he had nice hands, and so that's one of my memories of my father.
How did he die?
My father was 74 years old, and he was healthy as a horse, and had a very bad stroke that left him paralyzed. He couldn't talk. He couldn't walk. We didn't know how much he could understand. It was like the worst kind of stroke you could have, and he lived for about 6 weeks, and then he died.
And he died in a hospital, correct?
He was in the hospital, and then he was going to go to a rehab place, and he was only in the rehab place a few days, and he died there.
Okay. What was the hardest thing about losing him?
The hardest thing about losing him was I had just had my second baby, and...
Not me, by the way. No.
Yeah, you're the third. I had a 1-year-old, and then I had a newborn. I had just had the newborn, and he died, and it was hard because I knew my kids would never meet my father. Would never really get to know my father. So that was the hardest part.
Okay, and were you there when he died?
I wasn't.
What do you miss most?
I just miss my father. He used to pop in if he was driving by. He'd pop in. He'd sit and have a coffee with my husband, Dad, and I. And I just miss he would just pop in, or he'd always be game to go somewhere, or even go out for a coffee, go out for a salad or something. And I just miss seeing him.
How do you think he wants to be remembered?
That he provided well for his family and raised good kids. I think that's what he would want to be remembered by.
And do you think he's in heaven?
I would love to believe he's in heaven. I know that the only way to heaven is when you receive Jesus as your Savior and receive the finished work that he did for us on the cross. And I don't know for sure that my father's in heaven, but many years after he died, a memory came to me. When he was in the hospital, my sister and I had gone to see him. And there was, he used to golf with this man, and this man's son was a pastor of a church in Windsor, Connecticut. And the son was there, who's a pastor, and he was just closing the Bible. And he said, I was just talking to your father, and I don't know much more than that, but my hope is that he shared the gospel with my father, and my father received Jesus as a Savior. And that was my hope. And then many years after that, I was talking to a woman who goes to that church, and that man was a pastor. And we were just talking about my father, and she said, you know, I remember my pastor sharing a testimony of how he went to visit this man in the hospital who had had a stroke. And the man couldn't talk, and he couldn't, you know, he couldn't move or anything. But the pastor shared the gospel with him, and he said to him, if you'd like to receive Jesus as your Savior, would you squeeze my hand? And the man squeezed his hand. I don't know for sure that was my father, but I believe that it was. So, in answer to your question, do I believe my father's in heaven? If he received Jesus as Savior, he's in heaven.
And what was your last moment with your father?
Well, when he went to the rehab, I would visit him every day because it was right down the street. And, you know, I had 2 little babies, so I'd have somebody watch the kids or my husband, and I'd run up there. And he couldn't talk, but I remember I laid next to him. The night before he died, I laid next to him in the hospital bed, and I just snuggled with him right in his bed. So that was my last memory of my father.
And how was his funeral? Was it sad for you? Was it hard? Were there a lot of people there?
There were the funeral director said it was the most people they ever had at a wake come. My father knew a lot of people, and there were 8 of us kids, and a lot of people, you know, knew our family. And the wake and the funeral, I can't say they were hard. I think I just I was so busy with babies at that time that I just kind of blocked out. I remember all my sisters wore black or brown or some dark color to the funeral, and I wore a bright pink dress because I just I don't know, I guess I just didn't want to cave into grief, and so I knew I had a family to raise. I couldn't just, you know, shut myself away in a hole. I had to keep on going and raise my babies.
All right.
How'd I do? Good job?
I had another question.
Raising the babies.
Oh.
No, raising the babies.
Oh.
How'd I do?
And do you think you ever had time to grieve?
No, I really didn't. I was just so, and then I ended up having you a year later. I had 3 babies in 3 years, and and I was just so busy with raising kids. But I can look back and say that was a blessing. Now that I look back, because I was so close to my father, and I remember years before saying to my husband, Dad, when my father dies, I'm going to be like totally done in. And I could see how even before I knew God, he was caring for me, because during the time where I would normally be grieving and probably shutting myself away, I had 3 babies, and I was just busy doing what I had to do. So I can't say I probably grieved in my own little way, but I was just so busy with babies and bottles and diapers and all that stuff that I just kind of moved ahead and got on with my life.
So do you think it'll be harder when Bachi dies?
Yeah, because that'll be my last parent to die. So I think when my mother dies, it'll be hard. But my hope is that she will receive Jesus as her Savior, and there's comfort in knowing for sure that somebody's in heaven. So that's my hope. That's my prayer.
And my last question is, there something about him that you know that you think no one else knows? That's a weird kind of question, but...
No, it's not like I know any secret or anything like that, but I think out of all my sisters and brothers, I think I knew my father better. I just knew what upset him, what
would... You gotta show them this video.
No, I think I was just closest to my father. I was the last girl in the family, and I think I just knew my father. I knew what would upset him or what would make him feel sad, and even though he never showed his emotions, I used to say he was like a He was like an iron-covered marshmallow because he wouldn't show his emotions on the outside, but inside he was a real softie. And so I think maybe if I can share anything, it's that.
And do you have anything else to say about your father?
Well, he was just, my father was an older father. All my friends had young fathers, and I had an older father. And I remember it used to bother me when I was really young, but as I got older, I just saw that, boy, even though my father was older, he was better than he had a temperament. He was always happy. He never got upset like some of these other fathers that were probably 20 years younger than him. And he was just the best father. And I had a great childhood. My mother and father were the best parents. I'm not one of these people that can say, oh, it's because of this, that, because of something in my childhood. Because I had a great childhood, and I think my parents did the best they knew how to do. And I love them both for that.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
Oh, baby. Yeah. This is an article I wrote about my father that appeared in the Hartford Courant in June of 1994. My father, John J. Blazis, passed away on October 25th, 1991. So in this simple way, I will pay tribute to my sweet daddy. My father was the Cadillac of dads. No, he didn't have money to shower us with gifts, and no, he didn't have endless time to spend with us as children. But oh, what Dad did give us 8 children, I will forever treasure. My father taught by example. He had a wonderfully corny sense of humor, a sunny attitude even during the most difficult times. He had a smile on his face and an uplifting comment every time you saw him. He enjoyed life and never took it seriously. Dad always knew how to make things better. When I was on bed rest expecting my first baby and feeling quite blue, my dad would just happen to be driving by, even though he'd have a hot fudge sundae for each of us with him, and he'd sit and chat and make me laugh. I truly enjoyed my father's company. He was my buddy. Even as an adult, I would go places with him often, and as we'd walk along, he'd always find my hand and hold it firmly in that fatherly way he did when I was young. 6 weeks before he died, Dad had a severe stroke that left him paralyzed on his right side, unable to speak or communicate. On one hospital visit, I laid down next to him in his hospital bed, and still, with his good arm, he hugged me firmly as if to tell me that everything was okay. There's a gaping hole in my heart since his death, but I will go on living just as he taught me by his inspiring example of being able to make lemonade when life deals you lemons. I will always remember a comforting song my father would sing to me as a child. He'd say, Laney bird, won't you be my Laney bird? And Daddy, my reply to you is, yes, Daddy, I'll always be your Laney bird.